I'm Algenon Cash, and this is Eat, Drink Triad, your number one source for what's happening right here in your backyard with the food and beverage industry. I'm always happy to bring you a really great conversation. So many interesting things happening throughout the triad when it comes to food and beverage, and this is how you keep up. I know some of you all have been messaging me. You're enjoying the series on Lexington. We've been able to reveal so much more than barbecue is in Lexington. And so if you have not been able to see any of those videos, make sure you are following Eat, Drink, Triad on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We're all over the place. And we're trying to tell the stories of some of the restaurant and bar owners right here in our region. Another great place where some interesting things that are happening, but a lot of people may be unaware, is also High Point. For many, many years, known as the furniture capital of the world. Believe it or not, they've got some really great food as well. And so we've been over there behind the scenes in High Point for most of the summer. We've been recording a 4-part series where we're going to tell you some really great stories about some of the restaurants and bars that are based over in High Point. But today, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of what you're going to see in that 4-part series. Today, I've got my really good friend, Melody Burnett, who is the president of Visit High Point, also known as the High Point Convention and Visitors Bureau. Melody, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for all your support over the past year for the Triad Food and Beverage Coalition and our Eat, Drink, Triad program. You have been so supportive. I sing your praises all over the region. And I've also been very impressed by what you and so many others in High Point have been able to do to sort of really, I don't know if revitalize is the right word to use, because I don't think you all were doing bad, but you've really worked hard to diversify, what you do over in High Point so that it's not all about furniture. And so I'm so excited about our 4-part series that we've been working on. I've learned a lot about High Point through this process, but I'm also excited about this conversation. For my audience that says, okay, what is the CVB? What is the Convention and Visitors Bureau? So what does Melody do day to day? Melody, let's start there. Maybe give us a quick tutorial on what it is the CVB does for a community.
Well, you're right. Many people are not aware of our tourism agency. And what we do is we want to provide and promote a tourism experience, not only for visitors, but, we want to provide a destination experience that our locals will be proud of as well. So we're looking at, outside dollars coming into our community. So we try to promote that in the best light, whether that be from our hospitality sector, or even some destination development that we have to do that's foundational. So I'm not going to lie, it's a fun job. And sometimes it can be frustrating, but, especially coming after COVID. But it's a really great way to connect to our hospitality sector. So, we work with a lot of hotels, we work with a lot of restaurants, attractions, and in High Point, we're known for our home furnishings branding. So we treat furniture showrooms and retail just like their attractions, because that's what our notoriety comes from, the home furnishings industry.
Yeah, Melody, you mentioned COVID, and it to many people, I've heard many people say that COVID is over, that the pandemic has ended. I think the science community would disagree that it's not quite over. We are still in the middle of a global pandemic. Despite the fact we've had a lot of people just get back to normal life. Just describe High Point right now. I know you all pre-COVID were working, hard to get your ball stadium up and running, and several new restaurants that had announced that they wanted to open. All that got put on hold when COVID hit. What's the state of the food and beverage community in High Point right now? Did you lose any favorite restaurants through COVID, or?
We did have some casualties. Now I will say that compared to our neighbors, we only lost 5 restaurants or food and beverage related businesses. And, in hindsight, that doesn't seem so bad. But it was 5 that we don't have now. And some of them were on the brink of retirement. So I think COVID just kind of progressed that a little bit. And we are a population of about 115,000. We have about 250 plus food and beverage businesses here. So to lose 5, we were really lucky. And so what I can tell you from post-COVID, and really we're still fighting COVID and different strains of COVID. But, when you compare 2021 to 2020, of course, we're back having full capacity inside of our restaurants. We're still doing curbside and delivery and takeout. And I don't really feel like curbside and takeout is going to go away. Even some of our newer restaurants, for instance, there's a new Indian restaurant that opened not long before COVID hit, and it's called Salt and Pepper. And I remember when Salt and Pepper opened, it's fairly upscale, but they're still doing a lot of takeout and curbside. Even today in 2021, almost in the third quarter of 2021. And so I really think that we're accustomed to still, interacting with our restaurants in that way. And I know that a lot of folks assume that now that we're at 100% capacity inside of our restaurants and they see a lot of activity, that restaurants are fine. They're fully recovered. People are back in the restaurants. Everything's great. And that's just not the case. There is a lot of recovery work that still needs to be done. I'm not even sure if we'll be able to fulfill that gap that our food and beverage community experienced last year. And I just think about some of the hard decisions that had to be made by our business owners. There was one gentleman I talked to. I remember he called me in December and he said, my property taxes are coming due in December. This is the worst time. And that bill was like $30,000 plus. How am I going to pay it? What kind of relief is out there right now? So that way I can still maintain our fixed expenses and pay this bill and still be able to keep my workers employed. And so, there's some tough conversations to have. And I know that we still are having issues with our staffing. Of course, that's nationwide. And there was a lot of concern about that. We just had furniture market in June. And so we know that when 75,000 people come into town, it's all hands on deck. What are we going to do to service them? And we didn't have as much catering inside the showrooms. And so, of course, we're looking at our restaurant community, our bricks and mortar, to help support that. And so that was a major concern, too, of what we're going to do to get them full staffed. And so I know that we had some job fairs here in town. I know that our folks were heavily promoted on Indeed to try to get whatever help they can. But we still have our challenges. We still have rental assistant challenges. I know that we're not expected to get any more relief from the restaurant revitalization funds. So I think that locally, we're going to have to look internally to see, what kind of funding perhaps can we expect from our municipalities and our county, and see if we can carve out some room for our restaurant industry, and just communicate to them that there's still some business needs out here.
I think you're right. And if you say you lost 5 out of maybe 250 restaurants, which is about 2%, that's certainly much better than what we saw nationally, where we saw some communities lose somewhere around 20% of the restaurants that they had, and some communities even experienced higher losses than those. So I think on average it was about 17 or 18% across the country. Certainly better than what we were predicting. And at one point, I know last fall, the Independent Restaurant Coalition was predicting that we could lose 50% of all restaurants may never reopen. So I don't think it was as bad as people thought, and but certainly to just lose one is horrible when you think about how much people put into their business. And I would agree with you that I did early on predict that I felt like a lot of the mom and pop restaurants that had been around for decades and the kids were loosely attached or didn't want to be involved, COVID was probably going to give those owners a good exit point to say, okay, hey, it's probably time to go ahead and pack it up. And so we did see a lot of that too across the country, where some restaurants that have been around 40, 50, 60 years shut down permanently. But I also think those owners were looking for a door and was on the way out anyway. So, but yeah, you mentioned the furniture market, and for so long, High Point has just been known for furniture. And you all now have your ball stadium open. You've got a lot of cool restaurants that are popping up. I've been down to Paddle South on Main Street, which is your new brewery. I know the Blue Group has been doing some really great things in town. They've got that Blue Magnolia, which is, I think, the rooftop area down on Main Street in High Point now. What really motivated High Point to feel like they needed to diversify and, move in this direction away from furniture?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a migration away from furniture. I think what we want to do is have our cake and eat it too. So, what can we do to maximize the market district and leverage it for other opportunities? So, for instance, traditionally, if you've known High Point, you immediately connect our furniture branding with Furniture Market. We know that that's twice a year. It's April and October. And our traditional downtown really is our market district. So there's not a lot of year-round opportunity there within that market district. So what High Point had to do was create a de facto gathering spot or downtown area outside of the market district, and then try to connect the two where there'll be, some pocket parks or maybe some more experience that connects other districts with the downtown district, the market district. And so that's what we're doing right now, is transitioning into more of a year-round opportunity, not only for home furnishings industry, but also for folks who are living and working here outside of the industry. So what we're doing with our branding is polishing that up just a little bit. So right now we have 60% of our market attendees are designers. So we want more of that designer traffic to come here outside of market. So we have lots of initiatives that are tied around that. So basically what you're doing is you're taking that home furnishings branding and you're polishing it up to make it more design centric, more towards the creative class. The creative class can be culinary. It can be landscape architect. It could be graphics design. It could be so many things that connect with the home furnishings industry. So we're looking at that. And when you look at what we're going to do to be attractive to those communities, to young professionals, folks who are in the makers industry, folks who are in small-scale manufacturing, that all link into our branding, we have to start looking at our amenities. What's going to bring people downtown? And luckily, we have some folks that made some heavy investments within our downtown area. First, it started out with Truist Point Stadium, home to the High Point Rockers, and they kicked off their first season in 2019. We also had some other announcements with Stock and Grain Assembly, which will be our first food hall, which will be opening up this fall. It'll literally be right in front of the stadium. You already mentioned Paddled South. Paddled South is one block above the stadium. That is our first downtown brewery. And then we were going to have the outfields, which will be housed within Stock and Grain, and that'll be some office space opportunity to get more people working in the downtown area to support some of those amenities. Tongan Yards is next door. This was an older hosiery mill. It was the Millis hosiery mill that has been revitalized to be an activation point, a really great third place for people to work, play, and stay. They've already announced that they're working with the hotelier next door. They have some event space, they have some office space. They've talked about a restaurant. They've already opened a coffee bar. They have this wonderful generator that if you are a maker and you need to turn out product quickly, you can use the generator. So those 3 blocks within downtown have really been activated. So we really haven't slowed down during COVID in terms of building these things. But what we have to do now is link them to things that are already existing. And I know that you and I have had conversations about Main Street. And, I think I outlined maybe in an email not long ago of 15 to 20 different opportunities on Main Street that are homegrown mom and pop, High Point authentic restaurants that are leading into that downtown area. Here's a prime example is, our Forward High Point organization is cultivating some events happening in downtown leading up into our High Point Rockers games on Saturday night called Rock Point. And they put out, flyers and coasters and yard signs and tent cards, you name it, specifically for the restaurant industry to have as promotional advertising. And so we help them get out that collateral. And even restaurants up on 68 that's far removed from what's happening within the downtown area, I was just really delighted to see that they were like, yes, give me those coasters. Yes, give me those tent cards. We are proud to promote what's happening within a 15-minute drive from downtown, to our North High Point area, because they know that what's good to attract people from the Triad or beyond is going to be good for their business too. So we're all in it in terms of transitioning High Point to be a year-round destination.
No, that's awesome, man. And I you spoke about Forward High Point, and I will share with my audience. I was really grateful and honored to have the opportunity to meet Wendy Fusco, who was part of High Point Core City, many years ago, probably a decade ago. And that there was a vision that was put forward back then around, what downtown or uptown High Point could look like. I think they were still trying to wrestle with the name. And I know Wendy is not as attached to the development and the program any longer. But if she hears this show, I would be remiss without mentioning her name and really just paying a little bit of homage to her and some of the work that she did early on back when High Point redevelopment was not nearly as popular as it is today. I think people have gotten a little bit more on board with it than when Wendy was in that position.
Wendy laid down a great foundation for Forward High Point to take off. This was very grassroots when she was involved, and she did a really great job of activating that uptown area between the library, which is around Ray Street, to about State Street, where my office is located at the Visitor Center. And when you think about that area, it is a perfect gateway that leads into that catalyst zone where the stadium's located. And it's just wonderful restaurants, just like you mentioned before, Magnolia Blue and the Brewer's Kettle. They weren't there at the time that Wendy was leading the efforts, but because of her efforts, all of a sudden that area became attractable and they wanted to do business there. And now we have a really great trail of walkable amenities that lead into that stadium area because of her efforts.
Yeah, no, I think she's still selling real estate in High Point. So,
Right.
yeah, big shout out to Wendy. You mentioned how food connects people. As I get ready to wrap up here, that is something I talk about very frequently. That food really unites people. You'll hear me say a lot of times that I believe food is love, simply because it does provide that unity and that connection, and everybody can sort of get to know one another over a plate of food. You all have a really interesting event coming up. Food trucks have become so popular, and I think in the past year with the pandemic, they've become even more popular. You've just seen an explosion around the number of food trucks in every community. But on July 24th, you all have the Food Truck Rodeo. So before we wrap up, tell my audience about the Food Truck Rodeo and how they can get registered for that.
Yeah, High Point Food Truck Rodeo is coming July 24th, and it'll be on Church Avenue, which is the street leading into the stadium area. So you'll see some signs and some promotion leading from Main Street to Gatewood Avenue and Church Avenue. And it'll just be a block party of about 12 different food trucks, some kids activities, some vendors, some live music, because they all go hand in hand, very complimentary. And the High Point Food Truck Rodeo has been in High Point for the last, I think this will be the third year now. And they just do a really good job of bringing the foodie community here to High Point. I know that they rotate throughout the Triad, and High Point's just been really great to support it. We want to get more people downtown, so what better way to make them aware of what's happening in our High Point downtown through food. I mean, food's just a wonderful attractor for that. So if you want to follow, just search up High Point Food Truck Rodeo, which is on Facebook. You can also go to downtownhighpoint.com, which is the Forward High Point website, to get more information too. There's no cover charge. You just show up and just support and enjoy.
Just show up and eat. That's all you.
How easy is that?
That's all you have to do. And you'll see me out there. I've already got this on my calendar, folks.
Me too. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
So July 24th, that's the Food Truck Rodeo. That'll be in High Point. Mark your calendar for that. Melody, thank you for being here for this conversation. Thank you for coming on Eat, Drink, Triad. I also want to thank you for being a sponsor. You all have been an amazing supporter and have really just jumped on board with everything we're trying to do through our coalition and our Eat, Drink, Triad brand. Again, I want to remind my audience that coming out starting in August, you'll see a 4-part series about High Point so that you can learn even more about some of these great places that Melody just talked about. Stay tuned for the Lexington series. We'll be wrapping that up here in July. And as always, I want to remind you to make sure you stay tuned into WTOB, because that's where you can hear about the Eat, Drink, Triad Restaurant of the Week. If you do love food trucks, we do have an Eat, Drink, Triad walk-up site that's now operating in Winston-Salem at Robin Hood Plaza. And we also have one in Greensboro at the Greensboro Sportsplex. And I am working aggressively to get one in High Point as well. So if you're a food truck and you're interested in being a part of that program, you can reach out to me. Don't forget to go follow Eat, Drink, Triad on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And as always, until next time, y'all stay locked in.